If you're someone who walks into a room and somehow feels like you disappear, this might be for you. If you're the one who listens more than they speak, they're one people vent to, rely on, even praise for being so understanding, but rarely truly see. You might look calm on the outside, easygoing, low maintenance. But inside, there's a quiet question that visits you more often than you admit. Does anyone really notice me? And here's the part most people don't realize. Psychologists have actually studied this pattern. That feeling of being emotionally invisible isn't random. It's not just bad luck with the wrong people. Sometimes, it's a role you slowly learn to play. Before we go deeper, if this already feels a little too familiar, pause for a second and subscribe. Not for motivation, not for hype, but because this space is for people who want to understand themselves honestly. And if you've ever felt unseen, you deserve conversations that actually see you. Now, let's talk about what emotionally invisible really means. On the surface, it looks harmless. You don't demand attention. You don't start drama. You don't make everything about you. In group settings, you adapt. You read the room. You notice subtle shifts in tone. You sense when someone is uncomfortable. You're perceptive, but here's the strange twist. The same sensitivity that helps you read others often makes you edit yourself. You downplay your needs. You soften your opinions. You wait for the right moment to speak, and sometimes it never comes. Psychologists sometimes connect this to something called silencing. It's a pattern where people suppress their own thoughts or emotions to maintain connection or avoid conflict. It often develops early, especially in environments where being easy or mature was rewarded. Maybe you were the responsible one. Maybe you learned that expressing strong emotions caused tension. Maybe you discovered that being agreeable made life smoother, so you adapted. And adaptation is powerful. It keeps us safe. It keeps us connected. From an evolutionary perspective, belonging has always meant survival. Our nervous system is wired to avoid rejection. Social exclusion used to be dangerous. In some ways, your brain still treats it that way. So you became likable, predictable, undemanding. But invisibility is the shadow side of that skill. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. There are usually two types of emotionally invisible people. And they look similar from the outside, but internally, they're very different. The first type genuinely prefers the background. They're introverted, reflective, internally rich. They don't need constant validation. When they're quiet, it feels natural, authentic. They're not shrinking, they're simply conserving energy. The second type also stays quiet, also avoids the spotlight. But not because it feels natural, because it feels safer. They scan for disapproval. They calculate responses. They hold back parts of themselves that feel too much, too emotional, too opinionated, too needy. Both types look calm. Only one feels free. So here's the question you might not like. When you're quiet, is it peace or protection? This is where attachment theory quietly enters the conversation. Psychologists like John Bowlby and later researchers described how early relational experiences shape how we show up emotionally. Some people develop what's called an anxious attachment style. They fear abandonment and may overextend themselves to maintain closeness. Others lean avoidant, they suppress needs to stay sufferient. Emotional invisibility can sit right in the middle. You crave connection, but you don't want to risk being too much, so you offer support instead of asking for it. You become the stable one, the therapist's friend, the strong one. And over time, people believe you. They assume you're fine. You've trained them to. There's a concept in psychology called the spotlight effect, the tendency to overestimate how much people notice us. But emotionally invisible people often experience the opposite distortion. You underestimate your impact. You assume your absence wouldn't change much. You tell yourself it's not a big deal. But sometimes it is. You might notice that in relationships, you're deeply attuned to the other person's moods. You know when they're stressed before they say it. You adjust accordingly. Yet, when you're off, tired, overwhelmed, people don't always catch it. Not because they don't care, but because you've become so good at hiding it. There's a subtle psychological contract happening. You give emotional stability. In return, you receive appreciation for being low drama. Reliable, safe. But appreciation is not the same as being known. Being known requires exposure, and exposure feels risky. Here's another split that might challenge you. Among emotionally invisible people, there are those who secretly resent it, and those who secretly take pride in it. The resentful ones feel overlooked. They want someone to push past their calm exterior and ask deeper questions. They fantasize about being fully understood without having to explain themselves. The proud ones build identity around being the strong, silent type. They tell themselves they don't need attention, that needing reassurance is weakness. But even pride can be a defense. If you're honest, and this part is just between you and yourself, do you ever test people? Do you ever stay silent just to see if they'll notice? Do you ever withdraw slightly to check who reaches out? It's not manipulation. It's a longing for proof. Proof that you matter without having to announce it. Social psychology also talks about something called role lock. Once a group unconsciously assigns you a role, the calm one, the helper, the mature one, it becomes surprisingly hard to break out of it. The moment you show strong emotion, people seem confused. Are you okay? They ask, almost surprised. And sometimes that reaction pushes you right back into invisibility. So what's really happening underneath? At the deepest layer, emotional invisibility is often about perceived worth, not consciously. You might intellectually know you have value, but somewhere in your emotional wiring, there's a belief that your needs are negotiable, optional, secondary. That belief doesn't come from nowhere. It forms through repeated experiences, subtle ones. Being praised for being easy. Being overlooked when you were quiet. Watching louder personalities get attention. Over time, your brain learns a pattern. Visibility equals risk. Invisibility equals stability. And stability feels safe. But here's the quiet cost. When you constantly adjust yourself to fit, you slowly lose clarity about who you are without adjustment. Your opinions become softer. Your preferences less defined. Your anger harder to access. You become adaptable to almost anyone, which sounds like a strength, until you realize you're not sure who adapts to you. This isn't about suddenly becoming loud or dramatic. It's not about forcing yourself into the spotlight. Some people truly thrive in low visibility spaces. There's nothing wrong with being reserved. The real question is choice. If you stepped slightly out of your usual role, expressed a need directly, disagreed openly, asked for reassurance without apologizing, would that feel empowering or terrifying? Your answer tells you everything. And here's something compassionate to remember. Emotional invisibility was likely intelligent at some point in your life. It protected relationships. It kept peace. It earned approval. It worked. The issue is not that you learned it. The issue is whether you still need it. It might look like saying, actually, I'm not okay, without immediately minimizing it. It might look like sharing an unpopular opinion and tolerating the tension. It might look like letting someone see your disappointment instead of brushing it off. Visibility doesn't mean performance. And yes, that risks rejection. But it also creates the possibility of being genuinely known. So I'll leave you with this. When people describe you as calm, easy, strong, independent, does that feel accurate? Or because that's who you learned to be? Sit with that. And if this resonated, I'd genuinely like to hear from you. Not a generic comment, but an identity one. This channel is for people willing to look at themselves without filters. If that's you, you're welcome here. Subscribe, stay curious, and let's keep having the conversations most people avoid, especially the ones about the parts of ourselves that quietly fade into the background.